Thank you. When we started looking at the type of presentation we were going to go with, we started with my current fascination is with some smart homes, but I was looking at it, smart homes, but kind of in today's lifestyle. The question we're kind of looking at relative to this is no longer what can I do in my house to make it smart and be interactive with myself, but what do you want to do? The technology is moving that rapidly, that quickly that we can be able to do that. So this is, we look at the entire house here at this point. And also, next slide, most of it can be totally all controlled from your smartphone. So next slide. My background a little bit is that I was working on my doctorate when the PC was born. Next slide. And from that, then I started when it was the PC, and I then eventually designed, built, and managed the computer lab for students and persons with disabilities at the University of Florida, where I taught for 20 years, and then FAU and Boston University and Central, anyway, a lot of places. I really enjoy this. Next slide. So we wound up with entire labs that were working just specifically for people with disabilities. Next slide. My background is with what is called Assistive Technology. These are devices that help people be able to work again with the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, was how do we level the playing field? Not make it better for everybody else, but just kind of keep it level, make it even so everybody can use and do their job evenly. Next. This covers a whole myriad of activities and different devices and different things that we can use to enhance or better our interactive with a regular life. Next slide. And just run down through there, keep going on this one. This is going to deal with vision, it deals with hearing, it deals with, just keep running them on down there. Different communications, voice recognition, all of these are different ways to be able to enhance a person's capabilities. Initially you can see in the classroom, but it also transfers back into everyday life as we're working with here, and brainstorming is going to be the last one. There's some relaunching tools to be able to do that. So my thought now is, okay, I've been doing this now for 51 years. How can I continue on doing that, because I'm not going up to university every day? So my thought was, all right, so if I have some dwellings and I'm dealing with, say, a returning veteran with the disabilities, how do I kind of integrate what I've got here, what I've learned here, into a living facility for a person with the disabilities and for all of us who are getting a couple years older every year? It seems that way, doesn't it? How can we enhance our living facilities to be able to kind of care for us? So that's the direction I've kind of taken with this. How do I make my my penthouse, my condo, into a smart living facility? So I've been spending the last year-ish, I mean, I had a house up north in Delray. I want to make it smart here. So this is where I went. Next slide. So I'm coming home, and this is my front door button right here. So I can either use the lock to get in if I can find my pockets, or if my hands are full, I just type in the code that I would like, and then here's what goes on in my household. Outside I punch in my code, the door unlocks itself. Next slide. I've got a series of sensors which we'll be talking about here just inside the house. All right, this is a multi-sensor. This is the Alexis Echo Dot, and this is a motion detector. So I've got two choices here. I can either let it know that I'm home physically because I come in, or I can talk to Alexis. Do either one. Next slide. And here's what goes on. This is my living room here. Next slide. The lights come on. Next slide. All right. My front door from the inside locks itself automatically. Next slide. So the knob flips around and locks itself. Next slide. The dining room lights, next slide. Turn on. Next slide. And in the bathroom, which allows me to be able to illuminate my bedroom, next slide, the lights in the bathroom come on. And in addition to that, if I have kept the house at a reasonable temperature all day long, keep it lower so I don't have a higher bill, next slide, it automatically changes my thermostat so it takes it down or up to wherever I've asked it to be able to maintain itself. So this is all done essentially in my house by either having that motion sensor know when I'm home and doing this stuff for me automatically, or I can talk to Alexa and say, Alexa, I'm back. And just by saying that, all of those things happen within my house. So from that point of view, how do all of these parts work together? Next slide. Several different things. We've got input devices, which can include voice or sensors. We have the controlling parts of it itself. How do these interact with each other? Next slide. All right, which is the modem and the hubs. And we'll get a little bit more into detail with the hubs because that's the communicating device that we've got where it talks to the Wi-Fi, because these are mostly Wi-Fi devices within your house. So we've got hubs to be able to do that communication. And then lastly, we've got the output devices. And go ahead and finish this off. This is anything from the switches that we're working with to the thermostats to anything that's going to be a reciprocant of the information so it knows how to behave within your household. Next. All right, for the input devices, we have the voice. Now, in the voices, we've got three major systems that we're working with here currently. Next slide. We've got the Android systems, we have the Google systems, and lastly we have the Apple systems. Next slide. The sensors that work in this also are getting a little bit more sophisticated and getting really kind of interesting. We have, excuse me, we're on the other side here. All right, we have motion sensors, next. All right, and we have the moisture or leak sensors within the house. We have weather sensors. We have temperature and humidity sensors. And we also have, okay, this is here the Alexa set. This is the Echo Dot 3rd generation and the Fire TV and all of those, so you can actually just talk to your television and say, turn on the TV and let's go to HDMI 2 and play the video. So you can just talk to it like that. And again, I was looking from the point of view, if I'm a returning person in a wheelchair, finding the remote, first of all, is going to be difficult, and then just talking to it, next slide, Barry, is going to save some issues here. Okay, and again, down there, that was the multi-sensor, and that one is kind of interesting. Besides doing motion sensing, it also determines how many lumens or how bright or dark you are within the area. It also has a humidity sensor and also has a temperature sensor built into it also. Next slide. Security is another issue of the inputs and output devices. You can check and see if your door is opening. Next, the windows are opening. If the smoke detections, of course, the CO2 sensors also. Next, and we've got cameras, of course, that we've got capability to be able to work with, and also unauthorized movement within a house, like someone has broken a window to be able to get in so that they don't mess with the two sensors that move with this also. Go ahead and run through, we'll see some pictures of this. This is the Ring doorbell. A lot of you have heard of this. There are a lot of these doorbells on the market where you can actually, someone rings it, you can look at your phone and see who's there and take it from there. Next, Barry. This is the security pad where you can type in your security once you get there, and keep the alarm from going off, hopefully. Here is a set of the sensors that are real small that sit next to the opening position on your window or on the door. And lastly, this is one that's become more popular with a lot of us also that I'm looking at, and this is that emergency response kind of thing. And these have taken some major leaps and bounds in the last year or two. Besides having the panic button that hooks on the wall, you've also got the one that you can wear around your neck, and they've even gotten to the point now where you've got just a wristwatch, and besides it monitoring how many steps you've taken all day and how fast your heart rate is. If it will also detect if you've fallen down, and depending what you've asked it to do, it will call an emergency number that you put in there and let them know what's going on, and also know the location where you happened, which bar you fell over in at this point. And next very please. This is my top of my chest of drawers. And it does kind of look initially like a little rat's nest, but you can see down here also we've got, you can see, yeah, I've got the vacuum cleaner that runs around and cleans things up after myself.
Roomba.
No, this one is not the Roomba. The Roomba's in the living room. This one does a much different than the Roomba. Just kind of bounces off of walls like my students used to do until it gets to it thinks it's covered everything. This one literally comes out and runs a specific pattern and then changes and then does a crosshatch on the pattern again. So a little bit different, but they're really kind of interesting. But this is what's going on my top of my chest of drawers. Next, Barry. Okay, the first thing I found most important is this section right here and this right here. These are battery backup systems. So if the power goes out, now I know power never goes out here in Southern Florida, but just in case you couldn't find a light switch, these are my battery backups. So this will keep going and running all of the time. Not for 2 or 3 days, but in any kind, so you don't have to go back and reprogram anything. Next, Brad. I also have the modem here, Xfinity generic kind, which I believe is a Netgear. Next, Barry. All right, this is what's called a Norton Core. I met Peter Norton several years ago back when he made something called Copy 2 PC, which is at the beginning of his career. And I have to admit, the guy was so anal retentive, I knew I would like the work that he did. He just totally into detail all the entire time. What this does in a different, and Barry has been really good at explaining, you've got to do your virus protection, which may not deal with other intrusion kinds of things. This is the router, and all of that security, all of that virus protection is in the router. So it gets cleaned, checked, and sidetracked before it goes to any device in my house. So instead of buying a protection program for every single device that I've got around my house, I put it in the core, and the core then does all that protection, so I don't have to worry about who's not up to date, etc. I like it a lot. The talk that we had a couple weeks ago where they were talking about the security, etc., they've got one of these products coming down the way too. That's what I was trying to ask him, and he wasn't ready to release it yet, but I like it a lot. Next, Barry.
Is that hardwired or soft wired? How do you get it in?
How do I get to it? Yeah, it's the router. So you would link it into your modem, and then into that you plug in your other devices. What's plugged into that are the hubs, we'll talk about here in a second, and also my 2 storage devices over there on the right. So anything where it's going out to the house, it comes first from the modem, then through the router. Now, a lot of times your router is going to be built into your modem, but in this case my router is that little domey thing there, and it gets filtered there immediately, and they keep it up to date constantly. I don't have to worry about that. They upgrade it as often and frequently, but it's always taken care of. It's always up to date.
So it updates and has all its own software built for it.
They do it online.
Right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, next then, I do have over here 2 4 terabyte drives. One of them is to back up everything that's going on in my house, and the second one is that the foster kids that my wife and I had always forgot their homework. They come over to the house and do their homework, and they're going like, "Oh, Dad, we forgot it. Could you bring over our homework? It's due for English in 20 minutes." I'm going like, enough.
Tell them how many foster kids you got.
24.
Wow.
So anyway, I set up a cloud with their names on it so they can get in and get their homework from anywhere. You don't mess with the doctor. Excuse me, moving on. Oh, wait. We want to do the hubs. The hubs here, this is the hub for blank, which is the cameras around the house. So if one of the kids pokes it in, it lets me know immediately. I'll get to that in a second. This is by Insta-On. And that was the predecessor to almost all the Wi-Fi that's going on. They've been around 40 or 50 years or so. And they had a really, really answering protocol that's different than all the Wi-Fi, which is mostly going on these days. And then this is the Samsung one here. And the Samsung is, from my perspective, deals with almost everything else that the Insta-On and the other ones didn't do. So I'm really pleased with them, because right now that Wi-Fi interface with all of your toys around tools around the house is real difficult. That's where we're having the most issues at this point. So I've got all three of these hubs right here, and these are the devices then that communicate to the switches, to the lights, to whatever it is around the house. Now, in addition to that, then, okay, we got the modem, we've got that. Oh, and yeah, I did get one more toy. I just got a new set of hearing aids, and they have Bluetooth built into them. So as an example now, my phone deals with Bluetooth. My phone also deals with everything that goes on in my house. One of my kids gets there, they punch in their code, it tells the computer tells my phone, it says so-and-so has just entered your house, and does it in my hearing aids, so I don't have to bother or hear anybody else going on, and then I can go back with blank, look on the camera, and see exactly what's going on. So yeah, I just got some new toys too. Tools. All right, next, great. All right, in controlling the house, again, we've got the modem, and the main modem I use is going to be the Netgear. Most of them, as long as it's good high speed, no problem. The hubs, again, this was what we're looking at back there. For the hubs, we've got the blank, which is taking care of the cameras next. All right, after the blank, I've got the Insta-On, and again, that's really old technology, but it's a different criteria. We can talk about that during question if you would like to. Also, the smart home stuff, which is the Insta-On stuff. Next, we have then everyone else pretty much, and that's what I have here with the Samsung. Now, please keep in mind, this is the blind guy. Next slide, Barry. And yes, it's spelled incorrectly, so I'm sorry. You get what you pay for. Next, moving right along. All right, now, the main question, and I've talked with Barry before, but there is something called an if-then-that statement. There is actually a special presentation on the website that talks about the if-then statements, and this is what you use to define and establish the criteria in your house. I've got stuff that lets me know that I can put and change things in my house, but I want it to be a little more custom. So the if statement is one that sets up the criteria. If this condition exists, if this is going on, then I want you to do the following. Let me give you an example of this. All right? My example is going to be very, all right, the if part of this is the condition that I'm looking for. Next step. All right, and let's say I want to deal with the motion sensor right here. The motion sensor is what? And you've got two choices with the motion sensor. Either you have motion or you don't have motion. Those are your two choices, which works real well with the binary system. Next. So I say in this case, I choose to go with the part of that criteria that is the motion. So when I have motion, then I want to do something, Barry. All right, so if I have motion, what I want to do is set up with the then part of the statement is turn on the lights. So with that little sensor in the front part of the house, if there is motion on that, turn on the lights. To take it a little bit further, and I don't have this listed, but you can also set a secondary criteria with that if-then statement also. If there is movement, turn on the lights. If it is dark, turn on the lights. So I've got two criteria. One of them has to do with turning on the lights, but if it's still light outside, I don't want to necessarily turn on the lights, so the second part doesn't trigger off. But if it is dark, so if the if then is dark and the if then is motion, then I turn on the lights. Are we good with that? Does that make some sense?
Sure.
Okay, moving right along.
Yeah, this is the basis of all coding and programming, the if, then, else paradigm.
Yeah. And we can do an if then else, you know, if I'm home, bring dinner, kind of thing. That one didn't work too well. All right, so with those criteria all in existence, there's anything you can do now that goes on within the house. Any of those switches, any of those thermostats, any of whatever you want to do, you can make those changes. All right, let's next. All right, my phone then looks something like this. Actually, my phone looks exactly like this. Where I have got, this is the Samsung icon on my phone, and when I get home, remember I said I'm back? Yeah. I've got an I'm back button. I can either push this button, and it will execute those behaviors, or as I come in, Alexa will also be able to understand this command, and I can say, Alexa, I'm back, same thing happens. Next. If I push this button on this same thing here, then it lists for me individually everything that I can do in my house. I can have my door locked, I can turn on the lights in the living room, in the hallway, master bathroom, etc., etc. So each one of those switches individually controlled, and also for these two down here, and we're going to play with my house a little bit, if you all are not too bored by then, where I can take these two lights right here and not only turn them on and turn them off, I can dim them or brighten them. I can also change the color of them depending on what kind of mood I want to create in the living room. Watch the giggling. So I've got that kind of control with it also. Next, Greg. These are the types of switches that you've got to be able to work with within your house, and there is a myriad. I didn't realize there was so much different ways you could do it. You've got regular dimmer switches with this. We have wireless switches so that they are not controlled. They're sitting out there as kind of like a relay kind of thing. Also, we've got with timers on them, so I can go ahead and turn off the lights and then make it back to my bedroom, and it gives me time to stop and get a snack or whatever, and then activate, see if it turns on or turns off, whatever I want to work with also. Next, we've also got motion sensors, which is the one I told you about that I have in the hallway. So I'm getting out of bed on my way to the kitchen. I don't want to search for it. It just turns it on automatically. I get whatever needed out of the refrigerator, go back to bed and lie down, and then it turns itself off automatically. So I never have to touch it and trip over the dog dish. All right, next, we have also some of the multiple device monitoring stuff that goes into some of the smart switches also. And when I talk about multiple device monitoring, some of these switches have a series of colored lights down the side of the switch that you can have monitoring other switches and devices around the house. So if I'm in the living room and I want to see if the porch light in the back is on or not. So I can look at the bottom light down there, and if it's red, it's on, and if it's green, it's off, or vice versa, however you want to do it. So I can have indicated on that switch what other things are going on within the house. Next. All right, and again, color changing. So as I said, and with any luck, we're gonna, as I said, I'm gonna go live and hope there is a safe place to look in my house, and we'll look around and I'll show you how I can change colors from here.
I'm coming there, you know.
He's coming. Larry's gonna check all the devices.
How do you say films at 11? All right. Thermostat controlled also kinds of sensors. One of the interesting things I played around in the house I was in, that you've got the locator in your phone that knows where you are, and you can have that as it relates to your house. So you're leaving the house and you're telling your phone here, if I get within a mile of my house or within, you know, a couple blocks of my house, whatever, I want you to know that. And I want you to take the thermostat down to a level that it's tolerable for me. In the meantime, the house is up really, really toasty, so you're saving lots of energy throughout the entire day. There are lots of things you can do with that locator where you are and what's going on with that. This is the Alexa app, also on my phone. So I use Alexa. This is the menu set. So besides just turning things on and off with the Alexa, this one here is probably my very favorite right there, because I can never remember when I get to the grocery store all of those things I was supposed to have remembered. We used to have a little rule at our house that whoever used the last one in the house put it on the list next to the refrigerator. So we had a nice list when we got it. Right now, all you have to do is just say, Alexa, put toilet paper on the list. It says, putting toilet paper on the list. You get to the store, you call up your phone like this, and you have all of those things listed that you have told Alexa to do, and you just touch it as you put them in the grocery cart, and it takes them off the list. So there are lots of those kinds of things that Alexa does that I'm constantly amazed of, but enjoying very, very much. All right, so I think that was, we have anything after this one? This is, again, these are sort of the Alexa apps that are going on with it, and let's see if we can just take a quick break here, plug my phone in, and see if I can see.
Let's give Don a great hand for this presentation.